baby.
We'll dive right in, guys. Thanks
Let's
for coming to hang, man.
Thanks for having us.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. The name of the company is Quantum Bearings Science.
That is correct.
That's the whole name.
That is the whole name.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I love the URL though, the quantum bearing dot science.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
That's what $50 will get you.
Really?
That's strictly business right there.
Expensive handle.
Cut to the
cool,
chase.
man.
Dang.
Well, dude, I had not heard of you guys until you reached out and was kind of researching your company, and it's cool to hear that you guys kind of started in South Alabama or Auburn.
We're down around Auburn. Yeah.
Auburn,
Yep,
okay,
yep,
cool.
Exactly.
So, why bearings, man? Why get into this, and what's your background, and kind of bring me up to speed on the history of the company?
Sure. Do you want to?
you
Yeah,
go
sure.
right
So I'll feel about the bearing one. So for bearings, right? I guess the one thing that led me to bearings was one. It's if you look at one the price differential between kind of standard bearings and high performance bearings and even ceramic bearings. I mean, it can be anywhere between $60, $80, $100. So one, there was a pretty large price variance. And second, if you take a look at the bearing industry, there really hasn't been a whole lot of innovation, right? It's kind of been the same old thing. The most recent advance, I would say, would be from Bronson bearings, where they did the powdered tungsten coating, which is a tungsten disulfide coating. And that was used in the Apollo mission in the 60s. So as a material scientist, there's been significant advances in material science, right, that have led to these materials being relatively low cost in volume, and these materials can make a world of difference. And plus, there's already been a lot of, I should say, advancements in board science, right? You're looking at composite boards, and there's some things that you can do for that, right? But I think, given my background and experience in material science, I thought that one, that window of opportunity, right, where there's just that tremendous differential between the standard performance and a high performance bearing pricing, and two, the lack of just innovation in bearings in general. So that's kind of the reason why we had focused on bearings. If you go back to where we started, I think it was 2018. I had called Brad and I said, Brad, I'm interested in starting a bearing company. He was like, oh, you're all right. Just let me know.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, that's cool. Just give me a call when you're done with it, right? So I kind of, after that, I went radio silent for, I would say, about a year and a half, and just really started looking at different research papers and things that could be done to bearings that haven't been done to bearings yet, things that have been done to things outside of bearings, right? So there's a whole field called tribology, which is basically the science of friction. And looking
You're
at
kind of blowing my mind with all this
Yeah,
terminology
it will.
right now, dude.
Don't feel bad. I get lost too. But.
So no, there's just like a whole plane of research associated with just science friction, and none of that was really being utilized.
Well, skateboarders, man, they're just like, hey, we're rolling, we're good.
Yeah.
We were talking about it before we got started, like just trying to get some good questions to ask you guys and stuff. And looking at bearings, I would think that most skateboarders, that's probably like the last thing
Right.
that they, the board is first, obviously,
Right.
a cool graphic, and then even wheels, you can get a small graphic. Hard to market bearings, And I think, with my time working at a skate shop, probably the most common bearing we sold was the
Reds.
probably reds, yeah.
Yeah, $15 bearings, throw them in. You never think twice about them. And I would probably keep them for like way longer than I was supposed to, just go through several boards, several sets of wheels, and just use the same bearings over and over until they basically explode.
Right.
And then you still ride
And then
it.
you're like, oh, okay, now I guess I need some new bearings.
Another
You
set
just
of the
don't think
$15
about it.
bearings
Yeah.
again. That's when we started. GMN was the low end bearing.
Yep, GMN and
And
MB.
you
Yep.
paid $12 for those. We would mow lawns all summer to get the money we needed. Mow 2 lawns, buy my board. I'll mow a few more lawns, I can buy my wheels. Bearings were last.
Yeah, man.
And you get the $10 GMN bearings, and like you said, just ride them until they turn into dust, and then go get some more. But as you get older, and maybe you get a little bit more of a budget, or you get older and get tired of pushing as much, and you think about, I sure like some bearings that would, make it to where I don't have to push nearly as much. That's when you start to maybe put a little bit more money into it and Yeah.
Totally.
I think it's like a set of glasses, right? So if you have poor vision, right, or you don't know that you have poor vision and you're constantly seeing the world through that lens, right, you might not know until you try it, right? So people that have purchased our bearings have said, you know what, I've really had to rethink my run because I don't have to push as much. I don't have to pump as much. And it allows me to focus more. And I think that's, if somebody were to ask us for an elevator pitch, I'd say that's probably it, right? We allow skaters to focus more and push less. Right. Yeah. And that could be focusing on not hitting the acorn in the frickin' road so you don't fall and eat shit. It could be focusing more because you're about to flip down 12 stairs. And many of these skaters these days are doing tricks in really tight spots where you only have 1 or 2 pushes, right? So there really hasn't been a bearing out there, at least in my mind's eye, that addresses those needs and addresses them in a cost-effective fashion, right? I think, don't get me wrong, I've skated ceramic reds, and they're great bearings. At the same time,
are reds ceramic bearings?
Well,
we'll get into all that.
Yeah. But there's different brands. So you have reds, and then you have red ceramics, and then you have, I think, Bones makes a black ceramic, and they're like $125, $130. So they're just outside the realm of what people can afford.
Yeah, and
people are able to buy better bearings, not just through us, but there are some brands that are making some better quality.
Yeah, sure.
You're a little hot, so
some better quality bearings that people before were like you guys said, you know, bearings the last thing I'm going to think about.
Yeah.
But now we're able to offer a bearing to someone that will say, well, maybe my bearing budget is not quite to $50. You know, I'm not going to spend $50 on bearings, but now we're offering bearings for $40-$45 that normally would cost you between 80 and 100
really?
or something
wow.
like that.
And even in those 80 to 100 range, right, they don't really do anything to address the issues that are related to what causes a bearing to break in, what causes a bearing to perform, right? I mean, if you look at it, there's just so many things on the nanoscale that just aren't done. I mean, you can polish and grind a bearing until you're blue in the face with diamond polish, but at the same time, because metal is a grain material, you're always going to have these inherent fissures and cracks, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to have a perfect surface. So they don't address any of that. I mean, Bronson tries to address it with a WS2 coating, but still, it lays conformally. It doesn't really cover, it blankets the hills and valleys accordingly. You still have those hills and valleys. So there's things that I just think that are low-hanging fruit in terms of material science and engineering that could be done to better the performance.
So what's your background before building bearings?
So I was blessed to be able to go to Auburn University, chemistry, chemical engineering. I spent a lot of time working on, I would say, a lot of different research projects, anything from making derivatives of methamphetamines for the Auburn University Department of Pharmacy to looking at steroid I know, dude, that's a whole thing.
Walter White over here.
Yeah. Well, a big thing in Alabama, right, is methamphetamines, right? And
sure, we all love our meth.
The big problem with methamphetamines are that pure methamphetamine, pure ecstasy, pure 3,4-methylene deoxymethamphetamine is not even a solid, it's an oil. So the way that they get it to be a solid is they crystallize it out of solution. And many times when they go through this process, it's not even 3,4-MDMA, it's some MDA derivative. It gives you the same psychological, psychotropic effect, but it's not 3,4-MDMA. So if you try to characterize
I got to have that 3,4.
The 3,4, right? Exactly. Well, the girl I was working with, it was, I guess in the Netherlands or in the Nordic area, it was legal to make a certain derivative, but you could, as soon as you cross it over the border, it was illegal. So they would bring it back and forth, and then they would manipulate it to be able to make 3,4-MDMA.
For what purpose?
For illicit drug purposes.
But you're doing this for Auburn under?
Yeah, because the thing is, right, when you get these materials on the street and you characterize them, 3,4-MDMA has a very specific spectral signature, like a molecular fingerprint, if you will, depending on the method that you use to analyze it. So when you're looking at different derivatives, they won't match up perfectly. So in a court of law, you could say, well, I think it's methamphetamine, but maybe not. Okay. So we would make these different derivatives as you would make them on the street such that we could characterize them to be able to build up a volume of spectra so they could go, all right, this is it.
Gotcha.
Book them down.
This is how
he's helping to catch the people that
right.
are
clearly defining what it is.
That's Winnebago.
But if shit hits the fan and the bearings don't sell, Walter White.
You got a backup plan. Okay. Holy shit. That's crazy.
I'm out at that point.
No, but seriously, it was a lot of fun. But chemistry, chemical engineering, and just a love for what happens on a molecular basis, right? So it amazes me that just simply by changing a bond, right, or changing a functional group in a molecule, you could go from drinking water to drinking peroxide and immediately die. I mean, it just blows my mind to think about.
That is pretty wild to think about, yeah. So I guess you were into skateboarding and had a background in that, both.
Yeah,
of you guys.
I can probably talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, we probably around 88 or so, we started skateboarding. We grew up in a pretty small town outside of Auburn, in Opelika. You heard Opelika?
Oh yeah, I know
Opelika.
Opelika.
Right.
Yeah,
in a community outside of Opelika called Beauregard. I don't know if you ever heard of Beauregard. A tornado went through there a couple years ago and devastated the place.
Dang.
A lot of people know about it from that, but not.
Okay.
But anyway,
I don't go down that way too often. But
right.
I'm sure, it's a wonderful town.
yeah, you don't go south too much. But yeah, 88, 89, I guess. I had known Jason and his brother a little while, but didn't really hang out with them. But shared a PE class with them or something, and they're like, "Yeah, we skateboard. Come hang out on the weekend, whatever." Went to their house, took a little Veriflex or Volterra, whatever the Walmart board was I had, and they had all the good stuff, the Powell Peralta and that thing. And from then on, 30 some odd years later, I've never been without a skateboard.
Yeah, okay.
I just caught the bug, and they had it. Jason and his brother, a couple of our other friends. I mean, in a school of about, what would you say, 1,000 people, probably.
Oh gosh.
Or maybe 5 of us that skated.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
You're preaching to the choir,
Right.
man. I know all about small town, being the only skateboarder.
Right.
Living on
Yeah,
a gravel road.
Yeah, dude.
We would get them to drop us off in downtown Opelika to skate these crusty spots. And then when one of us finally got a driver's license, they would take us to Auburn and drop us off on campus. And that was the mecca.
Oh, you're in heaven. Yeah,
That's where the spots were.
Some next
sidewalks,
Yeah.
concrete. Yeah. I grew up on a dirt road, man. I didn't even have.
Yeah.
So did we.
for the
It
most
was a
part.
gravel. Yeah, it was a dirt road, and that was probably the best thing that happened to us growing up skateboarding as kids. Right, was when they paved
Right.
our road, and
Finally
they were like,
paved
"All right,
it.
dude,
Some
let's
good
get the."
pavement too.
Oh
man.
yeah, we had that 4-foot jump ramp. We were just trying to cry stairs off it. Oh my gosh, man.
But yeah, just like I said, I don't remember a time in those years since that I haven't had a skateboard.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't skate as much as we used to because there's
Well, priorities. Yeah,
right,
you got stuff going on.
and you break an arm or something, you're out of work.
Sure.
Can't do that. I work at a keyboard all day. I can't afford to be out of work. But
Hey, you'll be all right, man. Get out and just cruise around.
Right.
That's really all I do these
Well,
days.
Well, yeah, I mean, to what Brad said, right? It just stays with you. Even today, I have no problem saying on camera. I think I'm 46, but even driving down the road or walking down the road, you're thinking, man, that'd be a killer spot to skate, right? It's
Yeah.
it's just a different
You
mindset.
always
Got the
view.
eye.
You always view it. I think I'll be 90 degrees with 90 years old with a cane, just walking down and be like, oh man, if I could skate.
Look at that bank over there.
Yeah.
Come here, Sonny.
Yeah, banks especially. Anytime I see
Yeah.
banks that are like
Wow, look at that, man.
concaved in an
How much
odd way.
transition you
It's
think
like,
that-
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
dude, I can skate that
It's a
right
skater's
now.
view.
You always
Yeah.
see things through a skater's point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Skater's lens, man. Exactly.
And of course, with that comes skate shops. I mean, some people go to towns and look for the local antique store or whatever. If I go to a place that I've never been before, I look to see if they have a skate shop, and I go in and I buy a shop shirt, or not even if I'm close. If I'm within 50 miles of a skate shop, sometimes I'll go. And my
Just go
wife,
and check 'em out.
she knows. If we go into a town on vacation or something, we're going to go look for the local skate shop, and I could spend hours in there just. Nothing you can explain, I guess. It probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but
And that's how we.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so how did the idea, moving forward, how did the idea to start this bearing endeavor come around?
Yeah, sure.
And how does one even get into the game of like making bearings? Like we had a guy that makes a local dude that makes skateboards, the all hands
Yeah.
skateboard
Yeah.
guy. It was really cool.
we're familiar with them. Yeah.
But it seems like that's like bearings are so much more complicated, like.
Well, you don't have a degree in molecular.
Well, yeah, for you, it's
Well,
nothing.
making boards is challenging too, right? I mean, you have all the different veneers, and you have to adhesive them together, and there's certain amounts of force and pressure that you have to be. I mean, please don't downplay what board manufacturers do. It's most certainly challenging. On the bearing side, right? I think that I know COVID's impacted a lot of people. For us, it's really been a blessing, particularly for me, because I do a lot of traveling for my day job where I work with lasers and optics and optical coatings. But when COVID hit, pretty much all of that stopped, right? Nobody really knew how to work anymore. Everybody was out of office. They didn't know what to do. It was kind of COVID vacation for them if they didn't have COVID. So, I really used that time to just dig in and just light the candle, and spent so many countless nights just researching. And that I think it's just building upon the research that I've done. I'm like, all right, well, that's interesting. Well, maybe we could use that for this. All right, well, this material is interesting. Maybe we could use that for this. Well, this material has a certain particle size, and if we could get it to this size, I think we could make that work. So it's just kind of picking and pulling what's already been done. And I think from the research that a lot of these people have done, they've done a lot of the groundwork for you, right? There's certain things in research reports that they just won't give you, right? Because there's always that little secret sauce that they just won't tell you. But for the most part, they'll give you data for a certain percentage of the materials, like 1%, 5%, 10%, 25%. So they'll do different matrices and they'll do different experiments. And it's just kind of taking that and looking at it like, all right, well, thank you for that. That means that pretty much works well, and I should start with that versus starting with 25%. So if you just kind of pick and pull the pieces that you need, it gives you a groundwork to start with. And then I was blessed by being able to get the lab space over at University of Charlotte. So that gives you access to a lot of the instrumentation that you need to really understand what you're doing, right? Because it's one thing for you to be able to read it. It's a whole other thing for you to be able to do it and then look at the impact of the results. So they have so I'm in the physics department, so we have access.
Just take over the lab and start building bearings.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much what we did, right? But in terms of the instrumentation that you need, it's multi-million-dollar worth of stuff that you need. So instead of acquiring all of that, which would take a lot of capital, just leverage what they have at the university. And those guys have been fantastic. I have to say, we wouldn't be in a position where we're at if it wasn't for some of the folks in the university that have helped us out.
And as far as producing the actual bearing, like the mechanical piece,
You don't have a machine shop.
We don't do that.
Okay.
The bearings, we get the bearings from a bearing supplier, a really good bearing supplier. When you start talking about bearings and bulk bearings, people will say, well, are they made in the USA or are they made in China? Which is, people
kind of
are
catch-all term.
Right. They are made overseas, but you can't just blanket something like that. You can't say, well, any bearing made over there is bad.
It's got to be made in America, baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Well, let me just preface that by saying that it's our design, right? So one of the things that that we've done is we have to design the mechanics of this bearing and the mechanics of the material to be specific to what we need. So it's not as like us going and saying, all right, well, I want an Abec 7 bearing, or I want an Abec 5 bearing, or Abec 9 bearing.
We're not just buying a pallet of this specific bearing and bringing it over and throwing coating on it, which is what a lot of people thought we were doing and I'll get to that in a little bit.
Stamp your name on
it.
it.
You guys are just spraying this stuff on there and putting it in your fancy tin.
So are these just generic bearings that are used in other things besides wheels?
So it's a standard 608 bearing, right? So
what's another common use for a standard 608 bearing?
Oh gosh, man, it's a pretty large bearing. I would say roller skates and
anything with a wheel, probably.
Yeah,
small wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's different bearing sizes, right? And this is this particular bearing is a caged bearing. So it's not a full complement bearing or anything like that, a bearing with no cages in it. But to Brad's point, that's there's certain things that we have to have in the mechanical design in order for us to accomplish what we want to be able to do on the coating. I don't know if you had a chance to ride the bearings, but one of the things that you'll notice is just one, it's insanely smooth ride, and two, it's incredibly consistent. And that doesn't come straight from a design. That comes because of the material science that we add to the process to be able to do that. And in order to get that material science to work, we have to have a certain set of mechanical tolerances in order to be able to get that done. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be as smooth, right? It would be a little bit more sloppy ride. still be quiet, but it would just be a good bit more sloppy ride. But yeah, effectively, as long as you know what you want, the challenge, right, is just there's not a lot of value, I would say, in button pushing. And that's effectively what happens once you have a design, right? Once you have a design and once you spec all the materials, really it's just you calling somebody and saying, hey, here's my CAD drawing. Can you put this on your machine system? And can you do it in high volume, right? So you have to go to a bearing manufacturer to be able to do that. And just like in the United States, there's places in Asia that are well known for their manufacturing expertise, right? So there's places like Suzhou that are known for their optics. There's, Hong Kong known for their finance. The West Coast of the United States is known for their technology, right? Northeast is known for their pharmaceutical development. So just like in Asia, Japan's known for a number of different things. Bearing science, one of them. The way that they manufacture steel process is another one. Lighting. So as long as you know where to go and you know what you're looking for, you can find it at a relatively low cost. But the key is, right, just making sure that you work with the right partners. And to that, I want to make sure that I give these guys credence, because one of the things that we did recently was we did a Boards for Bros bearing, and we went to our supplier and said, hey, this is what we're thinking about. We've got a new design for these guys. Are you guys familiar with Boards for Bros?
Boards for Bros. No.
Yeah.
No. Bring me up to speed.
It's pretty much a nonprofit that they supply complete skateboards to kids that otherwise would never get into skateboarding.
Yeah,
Maybe
would
give them an outlet
Sure.
and give them a decent board. And that's where we come in. He can speak more on the bearings that they obviously they want to get as much as they can for their buck because they're a nonprofit.
Right.
But the bearings that they're using in their builds may not be the best quality. They roll, but
They don't last.
if you give a board to a kid that maybe wanted to not so much get into skateboard and was like, here, I'll take that free skateboard, and he rides it for a little while, and then the bearings
sucks.
Yeah.
What is
He's
he
like,
going to
well,
do?
this isn't
He's
fun.
going to throw it out in the yard, so you go
Sure,
ahead.
yeah. So, and thanks for that, by the way. But yet, when we told the supplier about what we were doing for Boards for Bros, they were so excited about it, right? Now, these are a manufacturer of industrial bearings. They do a lot of automotive bearings. They're not known for their skateboard bearings. And there's a reason why we went to them for that very reason.
Were they the first guys you went to?
Yeah, what is that like?
No,
finding
we
a
went through like
manufacturer
4
that's
different
Okay.
ones.
And you're like, no, these guys
These
suck.
are
Yeah,
it.
let's try this. Yeah, let's
Well,
try
no,
this.
the bearings were great. I think more than anything, it was just as a manufacturer, right? You have to be, it's not just necessarily about lowest cost and best quality. It's a combination of lowest cost, best quality, and customer service, right? Am I able to tell them, hey, I want to be able to manipulate this size by X, Y, Z, or this dimension by this? Can they do it? Can they verify it? And are they willing to do it? Many companies that make bearings by the millions would be like, nah, you know what?
That's too small of a
Right.
project.
Yeah, too small, right? You
Yeah.
get 80-20'd out, right? So you get phased out and you get crappy product. But when we told these guys about the Boards for Bros bearings, they were like, you know what? That's so awesome. We're going to give you our bearings at cost. And we just absorbed the cost because it was low enough for us to be able to do it. We did everything for these guys pro bono. And we gave them a really nice branded bearing that works really well for them, right?
Got their
Their
name
logo
on the
on
shield.
it,
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
That's
okay.
cool. That's really
But
cool.
in the guts of it, it's a quantum science bearing.
Well,
that
we
you guys put
we
together.
don't do our process to it because, for one, I think it would make the bearing too fast for the kids that are on the board, right?
Crap.
I mean,
Too fast, man.
well, I mean, you just that's something you have to be
Yeah,
cognizant
okay.
about, right? I mean, if it's a kid that
I don't
first
think I've
steps on the
ever had that
board-
problem with buying bearings. The cheap $15 bearings I've always bought my whole life. These are too fast, dude. Too fast.
Well, I mean, if you start applying the coating to it and you start correcting the inefficiencies of the design, then yeah, of course, it's inherently going to be faster. So yeah, I mean, we added a little bit of our lubricant in it to kind of help out and fill some of the gaps, right? But no, I mean, that's something we probably wouldn't want to do for them. There was talk about us maybe doing like a Giving Tuesday thing for them, where they put their bearings online, right? And people will donate a certain amount of money, and maybe they'll get the Board for Bros edition bearings. And in that instant, right, if it's going to be skaters that have a little bit more background, a little bit more experience, then
we
yeah,
might put some of the good
yeah,
stuff.
run it through our process,
Yeah.
right? But they'll let us know. I mean, they're running the show. Mongo just make bearing.
Yeah. Boards for Bros. I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
That's
look
cool,
them up.
man.
They
Yeah,
have
I'll check 'em
chapters
out.
they have a chapter in North Carolina where Jason is, and
All right, so you decide you want to get into bearings. You take over the lab at your local university, and what's the first thing you do? We kind of skimmed over it a little bit. You said you guys tried some different manufacturers. Do you just get a bearing that's already put together, and then you just add your secret sauce to it, or do you start finiting it and going back and say, hey, could you build it like this? Well, and you kind of mentioned, and I used to know this, you talked about the different Abecs. 5, 7, 9. Briefly, what is that?
Yeah, so basically it has to deal with the so are you familiar with the Abec system and why the whole
vaguely
Abec system?
I think we always sold, it's like, oh, these are Abec not or 7s or whatever, I worked at a skate shop for a little while, and I didn't really, that was probably the thing I was least educated on was bearings. Like I could tell you, like, oh, this board's great, that board's going to break, oh, you're a bigger guy, you need to go with this board or these type of wheels. But then bearings, it was always like, oh, those are $15.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else to tell you. They're good.
Those are the $15 bearings. And
those are the $100. Which one do you want? Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think probably most kids in skateboarding see it the same way. It's like, well, bearing's a bearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to break that, right? We're trying to break that by saying, a bearing is not necessarily a bearing. It all depends on what you're trying to get out of it, right? To your point about where did we start, right? It wasn't an easy process, and it wasn't smooth. Oh my gosh, we screwed up quite a few times going on, right? Just thinking, all right, well, originally we were gonna make an all weatherproof bearing, and we did. The problem with that was it only worked about 50% of the time, and one of the things that we found out about it was we would ship bearings via ground and it would work great, but when it went into the belly of a plane and it was cold and some of this material would leach out, and when it would get to the end place, the end destination, they would lock up. I mean, you could unlock it if you wanted to, but who wants to fiddle around with bearings?
Who wants to buy new bearings and then ride them a couple times? Yeah. These are crap,
Yeah.
So I mean, it wasn't smooth. Luckily for us, the ones that we ground shipped were over to Peter at Faith, and they all worked out great.
Yeah, I didn't burn that bridge right away.
No, we didn't burn that bridge. But there were some other ones that were bumpy, right? So it caused us just to take a step back and go, all right, are we doing the right things in the right way, in the right fashion, in the right order? Let's take a step back, right? And let's just think about things. And we did. And then that's the current generation, of the formulation that we have. We have some things in the works, right? We're revisiting this all-weather bearing. And we kind of feel that's what, I don't want to give too much away, but we feel that's what an $80 to $100 bearing should be, right? It should really be.
If you roll through a puddle, it doesn't just destroy your bearings. Yeah.
Or no oil whatsoever, right? Because one of the biggest issues, one of the things that kind of irks me a little bit, but okay, to each their own. People skate shieldless bearings, right? If you are going to pay $50 for bearings and you're looking for longevity, I don't understand why you would want to skate them shieldless, right? You just allow so much debris into the bearing, right? So for me,
what's the benefit? Why does anybody even sell those?
So yeah, a couple of different reasons. One is that traditionally the shield has been to keep the debris out, right? But many of the shields that are on there today are just relatively low quality and they just pop out. They're not really tolerant for the bearings, right? So if you land on impact, the shield will pop out, right? And people just get sick and tired of that.
The rare instance that some people do clean their bearings, they'll pop the shields and don't put them back on, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so the manufacturer's like, the kids don't like these shields. We'll just sell them without them.
Well,
they like the sound too. They get louder, obviously. The more dirt and the more debris and the more scratches and whatnot you get in the bearing, they get louder. I like a quiet bearing myself.
Such a nuanced thing.
Yeah. A loud bearing is not a happy bearing.
Like you said, to each their own. But if you walked into an industrial plant with precision bearings and you started popping the shields off of them, they would probably go, "What are you doing?" That sort of thing. But and you think about a skateboard bearing, how low to the ground it is, and how much
dirt,
the chance of
in there.
how much the chance of stuff getting in there. Why not leave the shield on? But
and that's another reason that we focused on skateboard bearings, right? Is nobody takes. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. Many of the people that we talk to don't really take care of bearings, nor do they want to take care of bearings, right? They kind of look at them as a consumable. So it's a really dirty, abrasive environment, right? So if you're going to develop something that can improve the performance of a bearing, why not work with one of the dirtiest bearings out there, right? I mean, if you're going to try to improve a car bearing, granted it's a larger scale, granted it's different materials. At the same time, if you can start to understand how people that run them shieldless and how that abrasion starts to impact what you're doing to the bearing, then you can in turn take that and translate it to something else, right? So it's really looking for utilization outside of just what a standard skateboard bearing would do.
And I guess most bearings are all kind of designed the same. Basically, you have a ring with a bunch of balls in it, and it just spins on another smaller ring that then goes on to a shaft of anything, a car, a skateboard, a roller skate.
And some offer bearings with more balls in than the other, 6 balls, 7 ball.
Well, actually, the inner ring stays fixed and the outer ring rotates.
It spins around.
Okay.
Yeah. Bring me back up to speed on all that.
No, that's all right. The axle holds it into place.
But
otherwise, it would slip.
So your first try at bearings, you said you guys had some issues once you shipped them and then realized the error of your ways once you maybe got a couple of phone calls saying, hey, these bearings, kids don't like them.
Sometime around, it was Halloween of 2020.
Yeah, I think it was.
You did one of the first coating runs, and he sent them to me. I said, well, first thing we need to do is probably get some kids riding these things.
So what's a coating run?
We call them.
Well, a coating run is basically where you run it through the process where you coat the bearing with our different material stacks. So it's basically running it through our process, applying these coats.
Oh, okay. All right.
You can elaborate on there's 3 coatings, and you could touch on this.
Yeah, sure. But
Well, he sent these to me. We call them prototypes. I mean, we needed skaters out in the field riding them, and we had a contest at the local park, and I gave them away as prizes. And I told these guys, I said, listen, my friend and I are trying this bearing company. He's got some really good ideas of making faster and smoother bearings. These are the first runs. You guys are going to be the guinea pigs, essentially, to run these things. And the amount of coating on there was what percentage of where we're at?
It was pretty thick.
Yeah, I mean,
not a lot of room.
One guy still has his. The others, they skated them for a few weeks and they would blow up, or a guy would go to ollie down a set of stairs and his bearings would blow up, and the coating on this,
go everywhere.
right? The coating was just, these things are crap. And I was like, well, I told you that, that you're helping us. We can take this and send the information to Jason, and even we sent broken bearings back to him and let him analyze them. And I mean, how many generations of and
Probably
coating?
7. Yeah, I think
Right.
we're on the 7th generation of coatings. Yeah. So it took a while to kind of get to that point, and it wasn't necessarily. Yeah, it was the coating thickness was a problem. I think also was we wanted to go with a lower profile cage material, right? And then we decided that probably wasn't the best bet because a lot of people rock spacers, right? And if you have high precision bearings and you have a spacer where there's a mismatch, then you can blow out the cage. So we try to take all that stuff into account. And if any of the folks that are out there that have ridden these bearings, thank you very much for the feedback. Everything that we take is not put in a vacuum, right? We try to take everything and say, all right, well, does this make sense? How many, let's do a Pareto of the failures, right?
Right. The stuff that these people we were letting people do with these bearings out in the field is normally, when you're developing a product, this stuff is done behind closed doors, but we couldn't do that. We had to have people riding the things to destroy them, or
you don't have a big facility just to keep it all under wraps.
One of the things we did was we gave them to a few shops, and that might not have been the best thing to do with the first few runs because Peter's still with us. Peter was one of the and Faith Skate Supply. Go buy your stuff from there.
Yeah,
order it online. Please
Shout out Peter.
Support Peter.
That's
yes.
right.
He stuck with us. I brought a couple of sets up, and it might have been, I think it was probably the second generation, the second runs. And it was when James Hardy was working there. And Peter said, oh, you brought me some bearings to try. And James was, I'm tough on my gear. Why don't you let me try some? So I gave Peter and James a set, and they rode them for months. I mean, I think Peter's probably upgraded since then and gotten rid of those. But yeah, a lot of shops that we gave some of those early prototypes to are probably wrote us off after that, which kind of stinks. But maybe they'll come back around.
Well, at the same time, right, I think that we have turned on a dime, right? I think when we see things that are like, all right, well, we need to make a change. Okay, well, if we're going to make, when we talked about a new cage, right, we said, well, we just don't want to go
You know
with
the cage is it's
the separator, the
thing that holds the balls
it's
in place.
Is that the outer ring?
It looks
Yeah.
like a web.
You got an outer ring, an inner ring, and then you have the cage or the separator that maintains the distance spacing between
Should have
the
brought
rolling
yeah.
elements.
should have brought
right?
a bearing with.
Well, we've got some bearings
yeah,
here.
we could.
Well,
yeah.
there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah,
Look at
yeah.
that.
All right, so I'll pull this up for any of our viewers on TV. But yeah, so
if you flip it over, right, that's the cage material right there.
is in the inner ring.
It basically keeps the balls separated and from
the
from
equal
flying
distance
out of
from
the-
each other.
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
okay.
And the one we initially used on all our bearings was a low profile cage, and it was brittle. I mean,
Well, it was glass fused nylon, right? So glass doped nylon, effectively. And it's what a lot of other bearing cage manufacturers make, but their cages were a good bit more thick, right? So we thought, well, because we have the way that our coating is formulated, it actually flexes a little bit, and we thought we could go with the lower profile cage. And you could. The problem with our bearings when we first started sending them was we sent them with a spacer, and not all spacers are fit every single wheel.
you guys know
right?
what a spacer is.
It goes in between on the inner
Exactly.
shaft of the
Right.
wheel.
Yeah. So the challenge, right, is if you have a high precision bearing, you might have 0.2 microns or like 200. Excuse me. You might about 200 microns variance.
You know what a micron is?
No.
Like
Yeah,
to-
you lost me.
How many
there.
microns is a human hair? Jim?
All right, so if you a yardstick, right, is 3.3. A yardstick is 3.3 feet, right?
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you take a yardstick and you divide it into a million, that's a micron. If you divide it into
one millionth of a yardstick.
That's
is
right.
is
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know what a micron
all right,
is.
so you got about 200 microns worth of distance, right, which is 0.2 millimeters. So if you have a spacer that sits 0.2 millimeters, which is not a big distance, but in a high precision bearing, right, if you have a axle slip, or if you land on the side of your wheels and you really put force on the bearing, right, you could actually cause that cage to blow out. So we started thinking about that, right? And first step is, one, I'm not going to chase wheel manufacturers, right? If you want us to make
Essentially, each wheel has a core in it.
Yeah, doesn't the core act like the spacer in the center?
Right, but
Yeah.
each wheel company uses a different tolerance. So if you have a spacer, it might work with this wheel company, but it might be too large for this one. And
Gotcha.
the problem with that is the bearing companies are the people providing the spacers, not the wheel companies. So I could send you our bearing with our spacer in it, and you pop it in your, I'm not going to call a brand name, but you could pop it in wheel A and it works perfectly, but then you switch wheels and it doesn't work with this wheel, and all of a sudden it rubs up against the cage and blows the cage out. What are you going to think? Oh, these bearings
These
suck.
bearings
yeah,
suck.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not going to blame the wheel manufacturer.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm of the mindset now where I'm not going to chase wheel companies' tolerances. Even the same wheel over and over, there's variances in the tolerance because of the molding process.
Right.
Right.
When the
the
wheel
mold cools, it
right.
Yeah, the outer cools faster than the inner core, right? So when they go to eject it, the inner core actually stretches a little bit or compresses depending on how they push it out.
They're like snowflakes. No, there's no way to.
There's no two identical.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I'm not going to chase their tolerances.
So what do? We got rid of the spacers.
Yeah, and we beefed up the cage too, right? But we had to think about that because we didn't want to do something Me Too, right? Composite cages are already out there. You just might have to pay. I don't know if the Swiss have a composite cage in it or not, but you really have to go up to like the ceramic $130 echelon bearings before you even start to see composite cages, which to me is ludicrous. Why should you pay these cages, a composite cage, just a straight up composite cage, is most certainly less than $2 for a pack of bearings. Why are you charging $130 because it has composite cages? Well, I have my own beliefs, but I won't put them on air. At the same time, right, we didn't want to do what everybody else is doing. So we have some material in the lab that we use for the coating design. So we put that in and we make some modifications. So because of that, we've got one of the best cages in the market, right? So one of the things that it's probably one of the largest failure points in a bearing is when the cage blows out, right? So I think since the last 1,000 packs that we've shipped, only 2 cages have blown out of 8,000 bearings, and it was because people had a spacer that was too large for the wheel.
When we were shipping them with the lower profile cage that we started with, it seemed like every day, or they came in waves. It's like one day we would get 3 or 4 people on Instagram and our DM saying, look what your bearing did. Your bearing blew out. And his first question is, are you using spacers? And I'm like, yeah, you sent them. So do you know how to check the spacer to make sure it fits your wheel? Well, no, I just threw them in there because you sent them. But since then, since we went to that beefier cage, we've maybe had 4 or 5. And again, the first question you ask is, are you using spacers?
Since we went to that cage, we've had net total of 2 out of 8,000, right? So 1,000 packs, 8,000 bearings, and both of those.
We had one the other day, and a guy, we were like, when did you get those? Back in April or something like that. And I was like, well, we switched the cage. Then we went to the newer cages in July. Yeah,
exactly.
So anybody that got our bearings before July probably has the original cage in there. If you're still rocking them, then go right ahead.
How long have you guys been up and running?
Since March. Well, it's your birthday.
March
Chief,
15th.
The Ides of March.
Yeah, we went live on March 15th.
Yeah,
last year.
Our website and
it's kind of cool, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so very, very young company.
Right.
There's stories for everything, right?
We're in 50 skate shops now, though, in the United States, which is
That's awesome.
unheard of. Yeah,
really.
The skateboarding industry is not very welcoming unless you have
You've really
a
established
name,
yourself.
a tie to it. And,
Or you have a megaphone, right? Somebody out there saying, I mean, because there's plenty of people that promote crappy product. I mean, let's just be point blank, right? I mean, they get paid a certain amount of money.
I
and
could
to
pay
endorse
you
it, right?
to convince somebody that the worst,
But this
product
has
in
been
the market.
grassroots, man. I got to say, I've just really been pleased with how well Brad has just been reaching out to people, myself also, and just, man, the skating community is amazing. It's probably one of the only sports where people that don't know you, they buy bearings from you, and they buy product from you, and they say, you know what, this is awesome. I want to help. And that's just, to me, that I get goosebumps thinking about it, right? Like, wow, just growing up thinking, man, if somebody was in our position and offered us an opportunity to just kind of chime in on product performance,
Right, yeah.
I mean, just wow, how, I don't know what my life would have been like, man. Maybe different, I don't know, but man, skateboarding is just a brotherhood like that.
Yeah.
It's just people will adopt it. People that do adopt it will give you feedback, and that's the one thing that I'll always say. You know what? I'll send you bearings for free if you'll pound them and put them through the test, but I don't want you to tell me, well, these bearings are great because you gave them to me. No,
Right.
please, no. The only way that we can improve is if you just be brutally honest with me, right? I mean, there's always a way to give your feedback accordingly, right? And be constructive in its format, right? But at the same time, right, please just tell us. The only way that we can improve is if you tell us. And the folks have been great about that.
Yeah,
Are these the spacers?
Yeah,
Oh, those are
the washers. Yeah.
Washers. Okay,
Right.
so you put 2 of these on each
That's right.
wheel. Okay, cool.
And it's kind of interesting. I don't know if let me move this so you can see the logo. But yeah, everything about that logo has meaning to it. So there's 3 processes. So you have, there's 3 processes. So you have the 3 rings, right? We have 3 different materials that we have. So you have the 3 dots. You have the circle and a hexagon, which is a symbol for
Satan.
Not Satan.
Come on, Alex.
A chemical symbol, right? So it's like it's benzene ring actually, and then you have the skateboard for the cue doing the board slide. So every single thing about that has meaning. And when
Very
we're
well thought out. Yeah.
and when we're in the lab every day, we think about that, right? I was talking to a buddy of mine. He came in and helped me package some bearings, and we were sitting over just listening to some music, right, and just kind of spit shining some bearings. Not spit shining, just put a little alcohol in there.
That's the secret sauce. The
No,
spit.
but we're like cleaning them, right? I mean, 2 dudes in America cleaning bearings to try to make sure that they're the best bearings that people can skate, right? And that's just us packaging it up, right? I mean, not including all the value add that we do in the lab, right? So I think for us, it's really one, getting the science out there and saying, you know what? Even if you don't adopt our bearings, that's cool. But respect the science, right? Respect that somebody's trying to do something different, right? And take science and improve something, right? Take some, like all these materials that we're using, they're environmentally benign. I mean, I wouldn't lick the bearing or anything like that. But
Suck on it. Yeah.
that's good. But no, they're environmentally benign, right?
So what does that mean exactly?
It's not hazardous to the environment.
Sweet. So when I get done with my bearings, I'm going to throw them out in the forest.
ocean.
Well,
the ocean.
Well, the good part about
feed
that
them
is,
to my
right,
goldfish.
that you shouldn't have to get rid of them very soon, right? That's another thing, right? Is if you develop a good product from the get-go, and you put a good product out there, then that's really less crappy product that gets thrown away, right? So we try to take all those things into heart when we went through and we started this bearing business. Is how do we do it? How do we do it responsibly? How do we do it and give back? Because skateboarding has been, I'll let Brad speak for himself, but skateboarding has been core to me, man. I grew up in an abusive alcoholic environment growing up, verbally abused, physically abused, and skateboarding for me was an outlet. It was a means for people that didn't know my home background and would just take me in, right, and would mentor me. And that's always been the beautiful thing about skating, right, is everybody has to be a mentor at some time, right? The person that steps up and does the coolest trick, oh, show me how you do that, right? And it doesn't matter where you go, as long as you have a board and you put your board down and people hear that sound and other skaters will turn and look, and it's like a brotherhood. And that took me out of a really crappy environment at that point in time in my life. And for me, it's just, I mean, going back to the Boards for Bros things and all the stuff that we do for charity work, it's important to give back. And the sport gave me so much growing up, and it just, like I said, it changed my mode of thinking, right? I can't drive down the street anymore and see an embankment and go, you know what, dude, when 6 o'clock when I get off work, I'm going to go skate this.
Well, that's awesome to hear, man.
Yeah, we went live in March, and first thing we did was start the Instagram page, I think. And then I thought, well, we need to create some kind of buzz because, you know, we can get our friends to ride these, and I can probably convince a couple of shop owners to carry these because through 30 years of skating and going into skate shops, obviously you're going to
got some connection.
meet shop owners, and the internet is a wonderful place. You can, Instagram, for instance, people are so accessible, or certain people are. I mean, Jason and I are probably way too accessible. I mean,
my wife will agree to that.
Right. Someone DMs us a question, and one of us will probably get back to you probably within half an hour, or less, you know. But just making connections with people, and I thought, well, you know, I can probably convince our friends to ride these. I can get these in a few shops, but we need to create some kind of buzz, good or bad. So I went to, you guys familiar with Slap?
Yeah.
The Slap message board. I went there and I said, well, my friend and I started a bearing company, and we're trying to, you know, offer high quality, lower priced ceramic bearing, you know, inexpensive, not a cheap bearing, an inexpensive bearing is what we call it. And of course, some were, yeah, man, that's a good price point. We'll check them out. And some were, Slap kind of developed a reputation of just being the, you know, the worst place for all the troll. It's better now. I didn't hang out there a lot before this, but I will say that they know their stuff on there, and if you can win there, then you can, you know, you can pretty much, the sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned, as far as the skateboarding industry goes. So we went there, and, you know, I think that thread that I started about our bearings is up to probably 15 pages now. Every now and then someone will get on there and say, oh, these are, you know, China bearings, they're crap bearings. You guys are just spraying this stuff on them. But for the most part, it's, you know, it's been pretty positive on there, and it had to be done. And from there it was, well, what do we do next? You know, we got Instagram, we got that up and rolling. We've got, you know, we're doing pretty good on the message boards and whatnot. People are buying them. We're getting into a few shops, and then we went, Thrasher from there. We had to, so we need to get some advertisement.
I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
The full page spread. That was sick.
Yeah, that's big time. Yeah. I mean, that's the standard. I think if you're going to advertise a skateboarding product,
go big.
That's where you go. Yeah. So
the Bible.
For the first one, we say, well, it's got to be product centric. You know, people that don't know anything about us, we couldn't just put a guy on his board.
Sure.
Like, how am I going to reckon you?
Right.
You won't know what bearing someone's riding unless you ask them.
Right.
I mean, I can tell when somebody's riding a low standard bearing. I couldn't tell you brand it is, but I can tell you when somebody's not riding ours,
That's what I'm saying, man. It's such a hard, bearings specifically, hard thing to market and a hard thing to kind of get your point across. Like, hey, these are worth the money and
Right.
to make kids give it a second thought.
Well, I think he mentioned it earlier, his analogy about the glasses. Like, unless you don't know you had bad sight until you try it. You gotta try
That's
it.
true.
You just gotta try it.
And talking about this, man, you sent us some bearings to try. Where did they get lost? They got stuck somewhere.
I don't know. We just got them.
We literally just
Yeah.
got them, so I haven't had a
see,
chance to ride them yet. But I'm sure I'll notice a big
Yeah, be
difference on
careful.
site.
Those are the Adams. Those are built for speed.
Sick, awesome.
That's right.
So
No pushing.
you guys, looking on your website, you do have 3 different styles,
series
of
Yeah, that's
bearings. Walk me through. I think the lowest price one was like $25, and then
Yeah,
it goes
that's
up to
about right.
say $45 for
That's
the other
what,
two.
yeah, for the ceramic.
What's the main differences for anybody that's looking at your products on your website in those 3 series of bearings?
Sure. You want me to fill that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So,
We have that open in the second tab, Katie. Can you tap on that?
Yeah, oh yeah, we do have the shop open. So there they are.
look
right
at
there.
that. Boom.
check that
So
Booyah.
on the left, we got the quantum metallic, and
That's
then we
right.
got the quantum isotope, and then the quantum atom ceramic hybrid. You're blowing my mind.
I
with
know,
this-
man. Leave it
with
to a
this-
scientist to name products, right?
Okay, you guys, in pure layman's terms, what are we looking at?
You're looking at good, better, best.
Yeah, so they're all great. I
Yeah,
think
stay
more,
up at the top,
Yeah, I
baby.
think more than anything than deciding good, better, best, it's really what do you want to skate? What's your terrain, right? So if you're, let's say, Jamie Thomas-esque, right, and you're jumping off of roofs of houses, right? Ceramic materials have a tendency, they're harder, yes, and you could hit them with a sledgehammer, they won't break. At the same time, they are a grain material. So if you had maybe a small little rock or pebble or something in there, and you hit a really high, you had a major impact, you could probably fracture a ceramic bearing. Since the 16,000 bearings that we've made, not one is fractured. As a matter of fact, I hit one with a sledgehammer in the lab, and it dented the sledgehammer and the floor.
Whoa.
Well, we dope our ceramics with different materials to kind of to take the things that we like about ceramics and mitigate the things that we don't like. And that's, if you were to scroll through, that's the whole MEC NC things, the matrix enhanced ceramic nanocomposite stuff. But really, the
There's
takeaway
a
is
quiz later.
Dude,
the takeaway is, right, that it really depends on the terrain that you skate, right? So if you're just all street, you know what, parks suck, ramps suck, I just want to skate street and I pound street, then I would probably say, man, the metallics, right, or the isotopes. The isotopes were really designed for skaters that just have one push, right, that want to go fast, but they want the speed and performance of a ceramic, but they want the, I should say, structural rigidity that you would get from an all metal design. So that's really what the isotopes are. And the atoms are like, you know what? You street skaters, you're all the same. I want park and transition. I don't want to push. I don't want to pump. And that's really what these are for. So I wouldn't say they're good, better, best, but really they're more tailored towards the type of skating that you do, which I think is a differentiator for us, right? I mean, you versus some of the other brands, right?
Yeah,
Where
they're not
better, best.
ABEC rated. They're skater rated. Like what terrain? What?
So for other brands that do the ABEC rating, remind me, what is that? I don't know
so
if I
we
ever
were,
knew.
yeah, you had asked that question earlier.
Yeah,
right?
what is the Abec system?
So the Abec system basically boils down to when bearings first started being produced for industrial manufacturing purposes, right? The challenge was nobody could really differentiate between what was a good bearing when you received it and what was a bad bearing. Nothing was really toleranced, right? It was like, oh, it rolls, right? It's a good bearing. But maybe what you're putting it in requires a tighter tolerance, right? So they needed a means to be able to, I think it was the American Bearing, ABA, American Bearing Association, basically said, well, we need a means to be able to classify the different tolerance levels on a bearing. So that's why whenever somebody says, well, we're not ABEC rating, well, I don't know what that means to them, but to me, that means that you have your own set of tolerances, and maybe you don't subscribe to what an ABEC 5 rating corresponds to in terms of tolerance, right?
What are most bearings, consumer bearings that aren't $100 a pop? What's
threes and fives?
Threes and
when
fives,
you start getting into like $20 and $30 bearings, they start to be ABEC 7s, right? So yeah, I would say Abec 7s. And then when you start getting into like slalom bearings where you need very little wobble, they'll generally do like Abec 11s and stuff like that. But when, you have to think about it. When you tighten up the tolerances, right, what are you going to do? You're going to heat the metal up, right? So if you have a metal on metal Abec 11, you're going to heat the heck out of that metal. So you probably better have either a really good lubrication, or you probably better think about a different rolling element for that. So.
I noticed you guys don't only make bearings; you also have your own lubricant that you sent with these bearings,
That's right.
as well as the tool, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I got to figure out.
Did you get the one with the skull on it?
I don't know. I got it right here.
Those were a victim of the shipping mishap, right? So they were stuck at sea. We were supposed to get those for October.
The little tool. No, I don't, yeah, it's got a skull on it.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah,
that was
supposed to be for Halloween.
the Halloween edition. And
Okay,
sweet. So now it's the Christmas skull.
So could I use your GraphFlow Stack 2 with any bearings?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, actually, it's preferred. So the way that we always donate some of that to shops too, right? Whenever new shops will order, we'll give them that. Yeah, there's that. Yeah, or you could do that.
These
Cool.
don't need it though. You don't-
Right. That was a big thing.
The new ones don't need any of this.
Because you could
Graph
essentially do too
stack.
much, right?
Right.
And it gums it up, and
Yeah.
you get more debris.
So before I was actually hoping to put a little video together before we showed up, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But I actually have in the lab a rusted bearing where it won't. I mean, you have to force it to roll, right? So I physically put it in water and rusted it up, and I've applied the GraphFlow to it, and basically what it does is it just allows it to roast super smoothly. And effectively what it'll do is it'll coat that hard spot, make it super slick, and over time that rough spot will it'll
kind of polish itself out.
kind of polish itself out, if you will, right? So it'll fluff out. You'll have to clean it maybe in about a month or so once all the rust gets removed. But yeah.
So what is GraphFlow?
So GraphFlow is not just a material; it's a process too. So we have provisional patents right now for both. So GraphFlow is the way that we kind of graft this material to the bearing. And it also has to deal with some of the materials that we use as part of the process, right? So for let's say tungsten disulfide coated bearings, like I think Sparrow bearings has a tungsten disulfide coating. The Bronson shieldless bearings have it. The challenge with that design is that you really have to grit blast the inside of the raceway, right? So you will smooth the raceway to a superfine finish, and then you grit blast it to create these little pockets, and then you basically powder coat. You take a high pressure sprayer, right, and you powder coat this stuff into there. So it leaves this blanket of material. But the challenge, so when we started this, we thought, well, why would we want to spend time polishing a material?
Why would anybody want to do that?
To grit blast it and then the reason why you do that, right, is so you can create these pockets of super smooth material. But the challenge, right, is it doesn't really stay in there. It's impacted by force, right? But over time, it'll come off, right? Just like platings, it'll come out. So how do we do what we do but not do that? So that's kind of the background behind GraphFlow. So it's like I said, it's not just a group of materials, right? So the three materials here, but it's also the three processes that we go through to be able to apply the materials.
Cool. So this is just I take away that this is really awesome lubricant for bearings.
Well, actually, a guy
High performance ceramic infused lubricant.
made in the USA, man.
It's got some of the nanoparticles in it that we use in the
As part of the
coating
process,
process, right? So you could take an old bearing that's got scratches in it and pretty much rust it up, like he said, and you put this stuff on there, and what it does is it pretty much paves over those things and makes them
as much as you can
smooth
with a
again.
drop, yeah,
Right,
right? It's
yeah.
really to be used over the lifetime of the bearing, right? Because as you go through and clean it, there's these things are going to get into these these little micro level scratches and imperfections into the bearing over time. And as you clean it, right, if you clean it the way that we direct you to clean it, they won't get flung out. They'll continue to stay in there. So this material over time will actually start to kind of blanket and leave that blanket over time. But if you're skating shieldless bearings, right, I probably would not use that because it is an oil-based lubricant.
Just sling out, right?
Well, we have a shieldless formula. Well, it'll attract dust more than anything, right? And it'll clog up the bearing. So we have a shieldless formula. So it's about 85% less oil. And so effectively it'll have just enough oil to move the ceramic material throughout the bearing accordingly, but won't allow it dust to kind of
That's
accumulate in
the
bearing.
spray bottle stuff that we send to shops that they
Yeah.
swear by. The
Yeah,
shops are like, yeah, man, people bring their boards in, and not necessarily people with our bearings, but people could bring their board in with any bearing brand, and they'll spray that spray-in stuff in there.
It's
and
just like boom,
bring
brand
it
new.
right
That's
back to
right.
life.
Yeah.
A common thing that I would see, and maybe you can explain this on more of a scientific level, kids taking like WD-40 and just spraying it in their bearings.
Isn't that a no-no?
And you would get like maybe an hour, and then it would just do something to the bearing in a way. It made it sound
a good
different. It
hour.
made
You
it
get a
roll
good hour.
different. It was what's going on there.
So the problem, so if you just take WD-40 and a dirty bearing and just spray it, well, the first thing that it's going to do, right, is it's going to lubricate with a very light oil, and it leaves a residue, which is another bad part about WD-40, right? But what it'll do is it'll lubricate all of the loose debris in there, and yeah, it'll work great for a while, but effectively what'll happen is in those little micro cracks, the material will have actually absorbed the lubricant itself, and two, that lubricant is so thin that it'll actually just go right into these little micro cracks. So then you're just stuck with greasy dirt.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then
Greasy.
it just coagulates over time, and then it'll just lock right up.
Locks
right.
up. Yeah.
So yeah, this material actually, there was a gentleman that texted us the other day, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I put this into my industrial sewing machine, and it runs at about a quarter of, I forget the exact vernacular of verbiage that he used, but it was effectively, it's about 25% faster than what I would normally see with like needling.
What are other applications for this stuff?
Yeah, so-
man. Can I put this on
Find out.
my sled before, maybe we'll get some snow this year?
So funny you mentioned
Clark
that.
Griswold.
So funny you mentioned that, right? No, like that's hilarious. I love that. Especially when he goes in like the Walmart parking lot, just catches on fire. But yeah, there's derivatives of this that could be used. So, bearings first, right? Skateboarding first. At the same time, there's derivatives of this technology that we're already looking at where you could apply this to surfboards, right? So maybe you don't have to wax.
That's so funny. I was literally thinking surfboards. I'm like, why would you apply it to a surfboard?
Well, one, you would probably want to minimize the amount of friction that you might see on this. Well, that's one of the reasons that you wax the surfboard, right, is to be able to create a hydrophobic surface across the surface of at the water interface of the board so you can glide more smoothly. So what if you could do that instead of waxing your board, what if you had like a permanent coating in there that was...
See, I always thought the wax was to keep your feet on the board so
Well,
you
you
don't
wax-
slip off.
Well, you could do that too, right? But you could also wax the bottom of your board.
I didn't know if people use something on the bottom of the board, make them zip through the water.
Same
faster.
with snowboards too, right? So there's,
Yes, people wax snowboards.
Yeah, so you could apply this. Snowboards are a little bit more tricky because they don't have that solid foam core, right? So they do have a little bit more flexibility. But yeah, there's derivatives of that coating that you could certainly put on there, right? They would just make it last so much longer. I mean, that's the thing too, right? Is there's just different derivatives of this that could be used for so many things. I mean, I don't know if I should mention it, but there's some things that we're about to do to beanies that would keep your head cool, and even in the summer with a black beanie would keep your head cool.
You're
Right?
gonna soak them in the graph flow, and
Well, I mean, there's
you might have some greasy hair.
He's got one on.
I know, right?
Yeah, let's try it out. Yeah.
Well, no,
My head is suddenly cooler.
I'll be your guinea pig on that one.
well, a lot of skaters rock beanies in the summer, right? And how do you do that, right? How could you create a beanie, or how could you manipulate fibers to be able to take the things that you like of the fibers, right, and get rid of the things that you don't like, right? Like a black fiber absorbing heat. How do you reflect the heat but still maintain enough heat to where you feel cool, right?
Mirrors.
Smoking mirrors, right? Copperfield.
Disco ball on your head. or something.
No, just a mirror. It would reflect the. No.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you go burn the guy skating next to you like a magnifying glass.
How big is your team? Is it just you guys?
Me and Brad and another guy named Blake that works in the lab. Balake.
Three guys.
Three guys.
Wow, man.
Well, you know what? Nothing ever happens with just three people or one person, right? There's certainly
There's
group.
an infrastructure in place.
Exactly right. So my gosh, my wife. If it wasn't for my wife helping out at home with the kids, right, I would never be able to do this. There's no way. I mean, there's sacrifices that are made But everybody's on the same page with that sacrifice, right? They're like, all right, Jason, go get him, Tiger. We're going to help you. We're going to help you on the home front. And Brad's wife, right? I mean, I've asked Brad to do things on the weekends, and his wife and family have made sacrifices for it, right? Same with my buddy Blake. And all the people that have just taken a leap of faith and tried our bearings, right?
I work a regular 9 to 5. I sit at a computer all day. My supervisor, the owner of the company, sits 5 feet away from me. So pretty much go to lunch, choke down a sandwich, hop on Instagram, reply to messages, maybe post about a new shop that's carrying our bearings, that sort of thing. Go right back to work, get home from work, say hello to the family, and check and see if I got more messages, or I have been working on this is funny.
So you're the social media manager.
Pretty much. I
keep the scientists out of the kitchen, man.
Right. The majority of what you see on Instagram is me. And I tell Jason, get on there more. He's not able to, but people love the science part of the thing. When we post, we call it Science Friction Friday. We let people basically inside the lab, and people latch onto that. They're like, "Yeah, you guys are legit." It's like, well, yeah,
it's legit.
Tell you,
man. That's cool. Yeah,
but it's definitely dedication, because we did a deep dive on the Instagram, and there's a photo of like pillows and blankets in the floor of the lab.
That was the week before we went live. He was sleeping in the lab.
I still sleep in the lab, actually. So I work a day job too, right? And I it's very demanding mentally, not so much physically, but mentally it's pretty demanding. So yeah, I can't obviously do what I do and impact my day job. So I usually start my day at like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 in the morning, right before the kids get up, and that's the only way that I can get out of there at like 6, 7 o'clock. So I will meditate during lunch, have my little yoga mat with my pillows, right? Sometimes I'll take a power nap, and sometimes it doesn't happen, and I just end up with a 30-minute meditation session, right? Which is also great. But yeah, man, everything comes at a cost, right? That cost.
Dedication is there. I love it.
Well, that's awesome. You said you guys are in 50 shops currently, right now, give or take.
Yeah, give or take one.
Which for a company as young as you guys, that's awesome, man.
I think
and
so,
I guess people are starting to catch on and start to believe in the product. Yeah. What's next for you guys? Besides we're going to do some graph flow beanies and try to keep people's heads cool. Do you guys, other than the 3 series that you have now, do you any plans to do more series in the future? Are you happy with the trifecta that you got?
No, the answer to that is no. I'm never happy with kind of status quo. There's so many. The challenge for me, right, and I think the challenge for Brad for me is to keep me focused. I'm always thinking of different ways to do things. I've got a 7-time world championship kickboxer that came to me and was like, hey man, I've got a project. Well, what's the biggest project, right? Are your gloves deteriorating from like beating the dick inside of somebody? He's like, no, actually the biggest problem with our gloves is they stink. So we're working on something to keep gloves from stinking.
Y'all do it all.
But it's just one of those things, right? Surfboards. We've got ideas for how can you improve trucks, right? Like true no-slip truck axles. Pretty simple mechanical designs. And the thing that I will say is I'm pretty good about sharing that, right? I have no desire to make trucks, right? It's just I probably could if I put my mind and dedication to it, but I don't want to. What I'd rather do is I'd rather find somebody that says, you know what? Let me take this idea and let me run with it and do it, right? That's all I ask, right? Is if just think about improving things, right? Don't just look at what you have and just sit on it. Be grateful for it, yes, but always find a way to improve things. It could either be improving through performance. It could be improving by having more sustainable manufacturing. It could be improvement by repositioning your business model to do more more volunteer work or more pro bono work. Just always be thinking about how you can improve, right? Improve yourself, improve your process, improve your science, and finding ways to just make a better, bigger impact, right? My philosophy is I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I just want to make the wheel better so we don't have to make so many freaking wheels.
Spoken like a true scientist.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, no, our buddy Jason, I mentioned the all hands guy. He was he kicked around the idea of making some trucks. He was like, "Man, I want to get into building trucks." I was like, "Why?"
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe I can put him in touch with you, and you can kick some ideas around. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, always willing to share, right? I have no problem. Just if you can work with an idea, run with it. You don't have to reference me if you don't have to. Just knowing that you're taking something, growing it, developing it, and doing something different, I think would just be all the satisfaction that I need, right?
So, what's the best way to grow your company? And you know, in a world dominated by the internet and everything, getting into new shops, what's been the best way to reach new
Instagram?
So
Yes.
social media.
We just recently, like a couple of weeks ago, I started a Facebook page. You know, I think Facebook's kind of
Yeah, a little more old school. Yeah.
A lot older people, not necessarily our audience, but I would say Instagram has been.
You got to start a TikTok, dude.
Really? I don't know about that.
That's right.
You don't have to.
But
You have to learn how to dance.
and we're going to continue to do Thrasher ads.
Speaking of Thrasher, before we got started, you mentioned something about a video that you
Yeah,
did
we
with Thrasher.
we
or
ran a
something?
couple of ads in Thrasher. I hope everyone's seen those. You can find them on our Instagram page. But along with that, they said, along with running these ads, you can if you got any promo videos or anything you want to
They'll
send
share
to,
on the website or
We'll
something?
put it up on our website. And I said, well, heck yeah. So I got in touch with all the guys that have been promoting our products and the guys that we mentioned on Instagram. And I said, send me clips, send me some clips. The guys that work at Boneyard, the skate shop in Opelika, those guys, shouts out to those guys.
Boneyard.
They sell the crap out of our bearings. They hats off to those guys. But anyway, I got with them. I said, shoot some clips, They're like, okay, yeah, Thrasher. We want to be on Thrasher. Who doesn't? So anybody that we have, sent bearings to that we've kept in touch with, I've said, send me some clips. What I didn't think about was that the different formats that people would be sending.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So
vertical,
I get guys sending me phone clips. I get guys sending me HD, which is fine. I get VX. I don't know some of them. I'm not up to speed on video editing. So I took all these clips that guys sent me. I got a
You
video.
get VX footage. That's funny.
I got a video editing app on my tablet, my Surface, and I spent probably 2 weeks. Like I get home from work at night, eat dinner, edit the video. I reached out to you guys know Man or Aster Man, the band.
Yeah.
I reached out to those guys because I have a friend who's a friend, and I said I want to do it right. I don't want to, I could throw Wu-Tang or something like that in there and
But
get
can
it.
I have a song that I can actually get a
Right.
license to? Yeah, that's
So-
a good thought, man.
So
Seriously.
I love their music. I mean, we would go to their shows back in the day,
yeah, they love
and
Yeah, we
Auburn.
had the Haste dudes on the last podcast.
Oh, yeah?
Local band, Birmingham Haste.
Very cool.
And I think they're friends with those dudes because they
Right.
mentioned them in the podcast or something.
their music. I just love. I listen to their
rock,
music
yeah.
all the time. But
Anyways.
anyway, so I got in touch with someone who knew them, and they're like, "Yeah, just send it to me. Let me check it out when you're done with it. That's fine. Use it."
Okay.
So I
Sign off.
I edited the video. I got it to about 10 minutes. All this different formats. All the homies were in there. I threw their names up. And all this stuff. I sent it to Thrasher. Nothing. Few days go by. I said, "Hey, did you you get the YouTube link?" I put it up on our YouTube. There's I'll get to that in a minute, but finally they responded like, "Yeah, we got it, but man, it is all over the place." And I was like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, all the formats." And I was like, "Man, you guys are Thrasher. I thought this was no holds barred, but apparently it's not." So all the guys that sent me clips, I'm saying it here now, I edited it all together. I made what I thought was a pretty kick-ass video, and it will be up on our YouTube channel really soon. But unfortunately, unless you start sending me high-def clips, you might not get up on Thrasher.
That's the
this time.
cleanest junk drawer I've ever seen, man.
Yeah.
That's the cleanest junk.
Thrasher. I mean, it was cool. It looked like an old 8th Street video, where
That was cool. Yeah.
the guy drops in on vert, and then the song just comes out of nowhere, and that sort of thing.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out.
I
Yeah,
thought
that's cool.
I'll put the I'm re-editing now. I'm only using what little bit of HD footage I was sent. I'm going to re-edit it and send it to Thrasher again, and hopefully they'll run it this time. But I will put the original promo that I made up there for the guys that want to see it. And again, I'm sorry if you don't make it into Thrasher on this round, but we're not done yet. We'll get you in there eventually, hopefully.
I think that could be a whole show, right? Would be the music behind skateboard videos, right?
yeah.
Oh, dude, man, some of my favorite bands I've discovered is through skate videos.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah,
like
man.
the 101 trilogy video, right?
yeah.
Where LeVar McBride
It was no
is
holds
skating
barred
to-
back then, though. You could use any song.
Oh, and they did, dude. They
Yeah.
totally did.
Yeah.
But man, just like when he was skating to
Cliff.
Jimmy Cliff,
Yeah.
dude. When he would, gosh, what was it? It was a kickflip, I think. It was like dun 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 dun. It's just, it gives you chills just the way that they choreograph the music and the skating together, right?
But
Yeah.
that was my my Thrasher video editing story.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. Well, I'll have to check out the video, and yeah.
Yeah, right now there's nothing on our YouTube channel. I put it up, and if you were lucky enough in that day and a half that it was up there, you probably saw it. And then as soon as Thrasher said, this thing's all over the place, I was taking it down. But we get DMs all the time. Hey, can we be on your team? Will you sponsor us?
I was about to say, do y'all do anything like that?
Here's, and I'll try to explain this so everybody out there that DMs us and wants to be on the team,
I want to be on the team.
you're on the team.
All right, sweet. I'm on the
already
team.
on
You
the
ride these and you tell people how great these are, and
And y'all hooked them up?
then
Yeah,
you're on
dude.
the, then
I'm
you're
on
on
the
team.
Sweet.
It's more a movement, I think, than a team. You know,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
Because, like I said earlier, if someone doesn't tell you they're riding our bearings, you might not know. So we need microphones and we need megaphones, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get megaphones. We're trying to get people to say, listen, these things are the real deal. You know,
Yeah.
these guys aren't just another fringe bearing company trying to put a fancy logo on a tin. There's real work. There's real
science and tech behind it, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're going to continue to run ads in Thrasher and promote people who promote us. When people DM and say, can I be on the team and that sort of thing, the first thing I say is, well, we'll be happy to not everyone. So don't hop in the DMs and say, send me some bearings.
Check out this kickflip.
I'll
Give
say,
me some bearings.
what I say is I'll check you out, or where are you from? Obviously, if that's not on there, are you connected to any shops? Can you, if I send you these bearings and you like them, will you spread the word? Because we've sent so many bearings to people. That's what you have to do.
We have to do
you
that,
have
yeah.
to flood. You have to.
Just get
You
it.
gotta get
fertilize-
feedback, right? Yeah.
You have to seed the market, is what we call it. And some people will get the bearings and disappear, and some people will get the bearings and tag you and mention you in every video clip that they put out, and we promote those people. All they want at the end of the day is for someone to share their video, their thing that they're proud of. If they tag you in a trick that they did, it's because A, they're using your product and they want you to know that they're using your product, and B, they hope that you will, give them some sort of notice and I try to repost anybody that tags us in something, anybody that mentions us. It's getting harder to do now as we're growing.
sure,
a little bit.
yeah.
We're not too big to give you a shout out, but it's getting a lot harder. But
One of the challenges that we face on the bearing side, right, is people can have a tendency to be fairly agnostic about boards, right? They'll go to one brand, they'll get another brand of board, try it out. Trucks, maybe even wheels to a certain degree, and bearings, people have a tendency to be real strong brand buyers with really strong opinions about their brands, and that's good, right? It's like Reds are kind of like the Coca-Cola of skateboard
man.
bearings. it's nobody even says Bones Reds. It's like, give me some
Just
Reds.
give me
right?
some Reds. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. So there's so much brand recognition around there, right? So you're always fighting that battle, right? That you're fighting that.
You have the two big brands, the one that's the gold standard of bearings, and the one that is a little newer that has the big team and the big marketing budget, and then below that there's kind of there's a couple that have maybe a strong team that are maybe rise up a little bit more, but below that is just everyone else, and our fight is to get up above what everybody kind of pigeonholes, all the fringe bear or whatever you want to call the smaller bearing brands. Our biggest fight is not being overlooked, because
And actually proving you have the
right.
product.
And don't get
right?
me wrong,
Yeah.
all those bearings are great. They're great skateboard bearings. They're you could put any of those bearings in your skateboard and say, these are the fastest bearings I've ever had, and they might be, but we just want people to recognize that there is some work being done and there's some new technology there, and maybe give it a shot. If you don't like it, or maybe you messed up and popped the shields off your bearings as soon as you got them, and 2 weeks later they were gunked up and you think they're crap and you went back to your other brand, that's fine. We would like for you to reach out to us and say, this I don't like your bearings because of this, and we can say, well, maybe you should have done this, or that sort of thing. But
you're not going to win every single battle, right? There's always going to be failures. I think the one thing that differentiates us too is, right, it's how do you respond to failure? And I wouldn't even say failure, because failure, I would think that you just sit on it and don't learn from it. So I would say in that instance, yeah, we've had some challenges, and yeah, we've made some, well, I would say probably mistakes. But I wouldn't look at them as failures. I would look at them as learning events. And yes, we most certainly did learn from those learning events. And going back to your response on the teams, right? Looking at our business, we want to do something differently. So one of the things that we're doing is we're giving a certain percentage of our profits, and it's on our website, to basically skate parks and skate charities. And then another thing that we're doing is we're creating these skate scholarships. So, I was kind of toying over my head, do we want to do like something that's a scholarship for people in material science? But no, I think I want to keep it more open, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a university or a college. It could be a trade, or it could be a course, right? Hey, I want to take a CAD course. This is something that I'm interested in pursuing. So we want to do things differently, right? There's people that pay skaters to skate, and that's great. I want to pay skaters to help them take that next level of, do that next educational kickflip, right? Mm-hmm. Take a course and better your knowledge in something. And we want to provide stipends for that, right? So
learn how to build bearings.
Learn how to build bearings, or learn how to...
I don't know. Man,
right.
I'm still like mind blown with all the...
It's the Derek Zoolander school for kids who want to do stuff better.
Center for ants. Yeah.
It's a school for ants.
Well, dude, this has been a very eye-opening conversation. I think I've learned more in this conversation about bearings than probably I've ever given thought towards bearings, ever. Right? And I've been skating a long time, so that's really cool, man, and I'm psyched to give them a try.
There's people in the background that are thinking about bearings, right? And that's awesome, right? I can't tell you that the biggest thing for me, right, and I'll ping Brad whenever we get a response, right, is, you work so hard to try to make this thing happen, right? You throw capital at this thing to happen, right? You blood, sweat, and tears to make this happen. And when somebody goes, you know what, man, I have to tell you, I normally break bearings, and these are the best bearings I've ever ridden. It just makes you feel good, right? It's not about the money. You're not going to make money in a skateboard business. I think for us, it's, are we making enough to where we can achieve our goals, we can help advance science, and we can do the two initiatives that we want to do, right? Which is give back to skateboarding charities and things that have been good to us growing up and help form our lives as they are today. And how can we help skaters that, help advance their education, right? So if we can check all those boxes, then we're going to, in my philosophy, we're doing what, and keep the lab open. Of course, we have to keep the lab open.
Yeah, keep it sustainable. Yeah.
It's fun work.
You just keep hitting stuff with sledgehammers, like you were saying.
I would be going to skate shops and talking to skate shop owners if we didn't have a bearing brand. This just makes it, justifies it a little bit.
Justifies it a little bit. I sell bearings.
The family goes on vacation, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go see the guys at, Spot in Tampa, or the guys over at, in Orlando, and now I have a legitimate reason to go in and stop and talk to him. Take him some bearings.
I texted Peter to see if he was going to be available. I brought some bearings for him for Christmas in the Riders. I didn't hear back from him, but maybe we can see him later before we leave.
He's a busy dude.
He is so busy.
Well, dude, this is awesome, man. And kudos. Doing anything in the skateboard industry is exciting.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's really cool. It's a fun industry to be in. Something I'm passionate about. And
that's why we're here. Yeah, we knew you guys would be the ones to help us.
Kind of blowing my mind a little bit with the science.
Right.
I think I kept up with some of it. I'll go back and re-listen and try to learn some of those big words. But yeah, man, it's rad and super awesome having you guys come talk. So
I appreciate
thanks
it,
for
guys.
coming.
Let us know what you think after you ride these.
Yeah,
please.
definitely, man. I hate that I didn't get a chance to ride.
Oh, no worries at all, man. It happens, right? I mean, given all the winter delays and all the Christmas stuff, it's no surprise that they.
I'm sure it's gonna feel like grease lightning. So
grease lightning,
be cool.
There you go.
But yeah, guys, thanks so much. This was rad.
Yeah, you're welcome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.